1v1 group pet, vest, Shuang, abusive scumbag, slapping face. Shen Nanyi is the only young lady in the Shen family, but she has been foolish and brainless since childhood. She also likes to be obsessed with men and is the last person the Shen family wants to mention. Until she woke up from an accident, a great change occurred thereafter. Did she, who originally had extremely poor grades, become a top student in the school? How could she, who has never had an aesthetic sense, design clothes? What? How could such a brainless person still play with stocks? Not only that, top-tier racing cars, computer assembly, and the big shots in the esports industry all call her a big shot, Ancestor. After learning about it, the Shen family's regret turned blue. Mr. Jiang from the Jiang family is a well-known literary scumbag and is also well-known for not being close to women. But unfortunately, this master was defeated by Shen Nanyi. One night, Jiang fell into a long silence as he watched the girl on TV. Did his child turn out to be so amazing? Sweet pets are not cruel. Shuang is so refreshing that it explodes. Strong and powerful alliance, shameless face. Keywords of the novel. Little Ancestor's waist soft heart wild, Jiang teasing her addiction without pop-ups. Little Ancestor's waist soft heart wild, Jiang teasing her addiction complete collection download. Little Ancestor's waist soft heart wild, Jiang teasing her addiction latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. The Return of the Boss. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. The Return of the Boss. Longcheng. Hospitals. Shen Nanyi, if something happens, you know how to pretend to be foolish. What else can you do besides causing trouble all day long? The old lady of the Shen family spoke in a cold voice. Where do you want my face from the Shen family to be when you do such a thing? It's better for someone like you to get out of the Shen family as soon as possible. If it weren't for you, my son wouldn't have gone missing either. You're just a broom. In the VIP ward, several members of the Shen family gathered in the ward. They looked at the girl on the hospital bed with an indifferent expression. You're not even as intelligent as my dog. I really don't know what's the point of living in this world. Why didn't you just fall to death? The old lady of the Shen family sneered, her face full of disdain. You're so poor like your mother. Shen Nanyi sat on the hospital bed, slightly hanging his head, his mind filled with unfamiliar memories. She licked her lips, suppressed her dizziness, and raised her hand to touch her head covered in gauze. Seeing the girl ignoring her, Mrs. Shen's tone became decadent and high, so that anyone passing by outside could hear her voice inside. Even if you're stupid, can't you even speak now? Upon hearing this, the girl lifted a plain white face and looked at Mrs. Shen with pitch-black eyes. Her voice was low and hoarse. The girl's face was not painted with powder, but she was still overly beautiful, an existence that couldn't be removed at a glance. The skin is as smooth as cream, with long hair gently draped over the shoulders. Especially those dark apricot eyes, shining with hope, captivating people's hearts. Shen Nanyi is very similar to her son, but it is precisely because of this that Mrs. Shen hates her even more. Due to the presence of the girl, many jokes have been made about the Shen family. Shen Laotai suppressed her anger with great force and said, if you don't handle what you did today well, get out of the Shen family for me. Shen Nan looked at her expressionlessly and said, are you my mother? What? Is it my dad? The girl remained expressionless. What are you talking about? I told you to get out of the Shen family, did you hear me? Mrs. Shen felt that Shen Nanyi must be crazy to speak recklessly. Shen Nanyi's lips curled up and he smiled slowly, I'm sorry, but you're not my parents. You don't have the right to drive me away. I'm your grandmother. Upon hearing this, Shen Nanyi turned her head and a smile on her lips seemed to be enveloped in a chill. Oh, you old man also knows. She picked up the coat from the bedside and draped it over her shoulder, her voice casual. I thought you were some kind of thug and robber, she said. The people in the ward were all stunned, staring at the scene in front of them with wide eyes. Did Shen Nanyi break his brain? How could this speak so fluently? Not only that, but he dared to speak to Mrs. Shen like that. Shen Nanyi. Do you know what you're talking nonsense about? Does your mother lose even her upbringing? Sister, how could you say that about grandma? It's really not right of you today. Listen to grandma and apologize to her, and this matter will be resolved. Before Mrs. Shen could speak, the two people standing beside her couldn't help but look at Shen Nanyi with displeased expressions. Yudish was even more serious. If there was no one around, her manicured nails would probably go straight to Shen Nanyi's face. Shen Nanyi raised his eyes and lazily scanned the two of them, with two names appearing in his mind. Yudish, Shenqi. These two people are her younger sister and stepmother, and Shenqi was adopted by Yu Dai from a welfare home. Shen Nanyi's mother died after giving birth to her. Her father, Shen Yu, disappeared when Mrs. Shen married him and entered the door. His original body also suddenly fell ill at that time and woke up incredibly foolish, unable to speak fluently. Shortly after entering the house, Yudish often bullied her original body with the child she brought from the welfare home. Shen Nanyi looked at the bruise on his wrist with a cold expression and said, "Tisk." She slowly put down her sleeve and chuckled softly, "Education." Her dark eyes turned to Yudish, and her tone was light. Shenqi, with your mother's guidance, must have had a good upbringing, right? Yupan didn't speak, but the high and raised chin was enough to represent everything. The girl's eyes twitched and she said casually, "So why did she deliberately push me just now, causing me to knock down a distinguished guest?" As soon as the words fell, Shenqi's face suddenly changed. What are you talking about? I didn't push you." The girl's imposing demeanor was overwhelming, and Shenqi couldn't resist it at all. Upon hearing these words, Yudish walked forward with an unpleasant expression and protected Shenqi behind her. "Shen Nanyi, don't blame Xiaoqi for what you did wrong." Mrs. Shen spoke in a cold tone, with a pair of vicissitudes in her eyes scanning towards Shen Nanyi. At the same time, she spoke up, "Shut up, Shenqi has always been well behaved. How could she have done that kind of thing? It's you who, when you did something wrong, refused to admit your mistake and turned black and white upside down. You are the cancer of my Shen family." Shen Nanyi raised an eyebrow, lifted the blanket, got out of bed, and sneered softly, "She knows if she pushed or not, and if I remember correctly, there are surveillance cameras at the place where I fell. If you go investigate now, you can still catch the person who wants to destroy the video." Every time the girl said a word, Shenqi's face looked a bit ugly. This can be seen by everyone. Shen Nanyi walked to the door and dropped another sentence, "Oh, by the way, I won't say if it's a cancer, but it's very likely that your daughter-in-law has given your son a green hat." After speaking, seeing that Yudish's face turned pale, she left the ward satisfied. Shen Nanyi. Mrs. Shen was so angry that she almost fainted when she heard this last sentence, but she still held her palm and asked the butler to immediately go to the surveillance room to catch someone. After giving this command, I completely fainted. In an instant, the people in the ward were all in chaos. After leaving the ward, Shen Nanyi relied on his memory and went directly to the clinic where he had his head bandaged. The door was not closed, half open, and it was very quiet inside. "Hello, is anyone there?" As soon as she entered, there was a desk facing her, and as she walked inside, there was a rest compartment with a screen blocking it. If she didn't enter, she wouldn't even know if there was anyone inside. Shen Nanyi just took a step forward when the screen was pushed open. The first thing that caught the eye was a pair of extremely slender and well-defined hands. Accompanied by it was the man's beautiful voice, like that of a violin. "What's going on?" Shen Nanyi glanced at Jiang Zhenhong's face a few times. The man's skin is very white, wearing a white coat looks like a noble young master from ancient times. He is good-looking, with soft facial lines and a pair of gold-rimmed glasses on his tall nose bridge. His eyes behind the lenses are deep and unpredictable, exuding a noble aura all over his body. The shirt inside the man had two loose pieces, luxurious and abstinent, giving off a feeling that did not belong to the secular world. Do doctors look so good now? Shen Nanyi blinked lazily and said, "Doctor, can you help me bandage it again? I accidentally bled again." Jiang was just resting inside, and when he woke up, his voice was a bit hoarse. Is this girl treating herself like a doctor? He lowered his gaze to look at the coat on his body. Ah, no wonder. Looking up, his gaze fell on the girl and he noticed that the gauze on her forehead was dyed red. The man frowned lightly and said, "Come over here." Shen Nanyi let out a sigh and pulled out the chair in front of him to sit down. Jiang turned around and went inside to find the medicine box. The girl's sitting posture is not very serious, even if her forehead is injured, she doesn't furrow her brows, as if she's not injured herself. Jiang came over with a medicine box, his beautiful fingers curled up, and he lightly tapped the table. "Sit down," he said. The man's voice was too pleasant to listen to. Shen Nanyi pinched her fingers and sat obediently, but her mouth couldn't hold back. "Has anyone ever said that your voice sounds great?" Jiang paused for a moment, his tone neither firm nor slow. "You can still yawn, it seems like you're not seriously injured." When wiping the medicine, he lightly touched her wound, causing Shen Nanyi to shrink back in pain. Damn it, did this man intentionally do it? "Did you come alone?" Jiang untied the gauze. "How did you hurt it?" Shen Nanyi's gaze stopped at the man's waist, his voice floating a bit. I accidentally knocked on it. Only ghosts can believe this." The wound was quickly healed, and Jiang buttoned his coat and sneered lightly, "Wow, you can knock it like this." She touched her nose and coughed lightly, but didn't answer. Jiang casually tore off a piece of paper and wrote a few words, "Warning, don't touch the water, don't exercise, come over and change the medicine in a week. This is the prescription." Shen Nanyi took the thank you and went downstairs to get the medicine. As soon as she left, a man came in from behind. He was holding a high-end shopping bag in his hand, muttering while entering the consultation room. "The clothes you're looking for are really expensive. I can match all of my monthly salary with them." "No, Mr. Jiang, what are you looking at?" Chihua raised his hand and shook it in front of him. Jiang withdrew his gaze, took off his white coat, and picked up the clothes handed by Chihua. A little pervert. New literature collection. I came back with a new article. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Meeting again. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Meeting again. The weather in March is still a bit cool, and the crowds on the streets at 8 or 9 p.m. at night are gradually increasing. The stall owner gradually left the stall. Shen Nanyi bought a hat and fastened it at a small shop downstairs from the hospital, which happened to block the gauze. She was nibbling on the pancake fruit she had just bought at the roadside stall, while taking out her phone to check her balance. 180, well, this is her first time being so poor. Originally, Shen Qi was still very wealthy, but since she was adopted, all the money in her card has been scammed by the other party. There is an internet cafe on the opposite street, and Shen Nanyi plans to open a machine inside to make ends meet for the night. He will talk about making money tomorrow. After paying the money at the internet cafe, she turned on the machine in the corner and touched the earphones on the table to put them on. Shen Nanyi was sitting in the back row, and there were also several boys with yellow hair on them. They occasionally used foul language and even slapped the table during their movements, making a lot of noise. "Damn it, what kind of luck are you today? How could you turn all the handlebars into boxes? And Qiangzi, didn't I just ask you to give me the gun? You didn't hear me, why are you still running upstairs?" "Sorry, brother Shen. The wave today was a bit fierce, and I didn't react when I was hit." Qiangzi scratched his head and felt embarrassed all over his face. Jiang Shen frowned and cursed a few words before starting the game again. Shen Nanyi searched for Shen's home online and caught a glimpse of the date on the lower right corner of the computer. His eyebrows gently raised. It turned out that the time and space she was in was actually the same as the world before her death. She just wore it on a girl with the same name and surname after her death. With a frown on her face, she checked today's headline news and found that the information about her was deliberately suppressed, so there was not a big splash online. It seems that one's own death was not an accident, but rather a human error. So besides that group of people, there is no one else who wants to harm oneself. Shen Nanyi licked his lips, took out his phone, and entered a string of numbers. Just as he was about to pull it out, he deleted the number again. No, I don't know what the situation is on their end at this time. If I disturb or say that I'm not dead, no one will believe me when I say it. Turning off his phone, Shen Nanyi was surrounded by a low pressure. TSK. Jiang Shen, who was sitting not far from Shen Nanyi, lost once again. He was so angry that he took off his headphones and threw them on the table. He turned his head and saw a girl looking towards him. He was already unhappy in his heart. Seeing the girl staring at him like this, he was so angry that he suddenly stood up and said, "Hey, what are you looking at?" Shen Nanyi held her arms and watched others play games. Upon hearing this, she lazily raised her eyes and said, What, I'm asking you a question." Jiang Shen frowned, feeling as if there was a fire in his chest constantly rising, making him want to lose his temper. He also took off the earphones worn by Shen Nanyi while speaking and threw them at her feet. The earphones were smashed into pieces, indicating how strong his strength was. Shen Nanyi squinted her eyes and her voice was 7 parts cold and 3 parts evil. "Are you finding fault?" Jiang Shen chuckled lightly, his eyes slightly red. His internal strength was causing chaos, and because he couldn't hold it down, all the fire was moving upwards. Damn it, it doesn't happen sooner or later, but it happens at this time. Jiang Shen has a very hot temper all over the place. Shen Gu, she didn't look. You. Before Jiangzi could finish speaking, he was scared back by Jiang Shen's gaze. So what's wrong with picking on you? Very good. Shen Nanyi raised his eyebrows and eyes, casually taking off his coat and rolling up the sleeves of his hoodie. There's no place to vent my anger, this person came at the right time. She kicked away the chair, grabbed Jiang Shen's collar, and smashed his head onto the keyboard. Intense pain struck, and Jiang Shen screamed loudly. Damn, is this still a woman? So strong. The girl's speed was too fast, and before even Jiangzi and his team could react, Jiang Shen was knocked down. Jiang Shen struggled desperately, but his strength was like tickling in front of Shen Nanyi, with no effect at all. Digging trenches, brother Shen. The Jiangzi and his companions stood up to help, but soon they were kicked by Shen Nanyi one by one. Shen Nanyi stared at Jiang Shen and spoke slowly, "You're lucky, but I happen to be in a bad mood. I'll reward you with a way to die, choose it yourself." Jiang Shen was panting heavily, his veins bulging on his forehead. "I'll choose your grandmother," he said. He turned around and held Shen Nanyi down. Just as he was about to point the acupoint that made her unable to move, the next second he couldn't move himself. "Do you also learn ancient martial arts?" Jiang Shen looked at her in surprise after being pinned down. This type of acupoint is only known to those who practice ancient martial arts. Shen Nanyi lowered her eyebrows and eyes, looked at him with interest, and then raised her hand to pinch the other person's wrist. Jiangzi on the side took out his phone and pointed at Shen Nanyi, shouting, "Hey, I told you not to touch my deep brother, otherwise I will call someone. Did you hear me? Hurry up and let go." "Jiangzi, shut up. She's helping me." Jiang was sweating profusely in pain. Jiangzi let out a sound and didn't dare to move anymore. He looked at the other guys on the side with a bewildered expression. Shen Nanyi could feel the surging internal energy inside Jiang Shen's body. She let out a sigh and pinched Jiang Shen's wrist to test it. Have you been drugged? Upon hearing this, Jiang Shen's eyes widened and he said, how do you know? I have a friend whose situation is similar to yours. Shen Nanyi pointed a few acupoints for him, and soon Jiang Shen felt that the fire in his chest had dissipated completely. I'll go, this girl is amazing. His eyes flickered with light as he grabbed Shen Nanyi's wrist and exclaimed excitedly, Master. Shen Nanyi. What's wrong? She withdrew her hand and looked disgusted. Master, do you know how to detoxify this poison? Jiang Shen's attitude completely changed this time, and his tone was filled with respect for her. He even lifted the chair that had just fallen to the ground and let Shen Nanyi sit down. Xiangzi looked dumbfounded on the side. Has his deep brother been fooled by someone's beating? Or is it that we don't know each other without fighting? Brother Shen, is this falling in love with each other? Shen Nanyi leaned back in the chair, squinted her eyes, and extended her hand to gesture. Jiang Shen took out the card very humbly and said, This is a new card I applied for yesterday. There is 100,000 yuan in it, and the password is 6 sixes. If you are not satisfied, I will ask my cousin to input 100,000 yuan into my card later. Upon hearing this, Shen Nanyi secretly thought to himself. Isn't this opportunity to make money just here? 2 fingers pinched the card, and Shen Nanyi put it away. It's hard to say here. Find a quiet place, preferably for pharmaceutical purposes. Pharmaceutical. Jiang Shen remembers that his cousin's house has a laboratory dedicated to pharmaceuticals, which is absolutely safe and quiet. Then go to my cousin's house. After speaking, Jiang Shenjiu took out his phone and called his cousin. Shen Nanyi had no objections and crossed his legs to look at the computer in front of him. On the page is the game that Jiang Shen and his team just played. 10 minutes later, Shen Nanyi, with his superb gaming skills, instantly captured Jiang Shen's younger brother. Xiangzi looked at Shen Nanyi with a look of admiration and said, Nanda, your operation is even more powerful than Brother Shen. Do you have any bullets? Jiang Shen controlled the villain to follow Shen Nanyi and said, Nandad, I have something here. He quickly put down his equipment and saw the other party take it and follow him with a thud. In no time, the screen displayed, good luck. Playing games like this is really enjoyable, Jiang Shen said with a smile on his face. As he finished speaking, his phone in his pocket shook. My cousin must have arrived. Let's go, Nanda. Shen Nanyi moved his wrist, pressed down his hat, and followed Jiang Shen outside. A luxury car parked outside the internet cafe is out of place. As soon as the car door opened, the man's long legs were very eye-catching. Everyone has a heart for beauty. Shen Nanyi instinctively looked up and happened to collide with the man's gaze. Jiang Zhenhong raised his eyebrows unexpectedly. Meet again. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Yo, talking about it. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Yo, talking about it, cousin, this is the miracle doctor I told you on the phone. Jiang Shen didn't realize anything yet and excitedly introduced Shen Nanyi to Jiang Zhenhong. Shen Nanyi pressed his hat even lower. What kind of fate is this? Divine doctor. Jiang Zhenhong said with a long tail, raising his eyebrows. Can a divine doctor still knock himself into the hospital to sew needles? Jiang Shen. What sewing needle? Do you know Nandad by listening to my cousin's tone? Mr. Jiang, hasn't the divine doctor come yet? At this moment, a drowsy voice came from the car. The car window rolled down and Chi Hua leaned out. He has just finished 2 surgeries and will be exhausted. If it weren't for Jiang Zhenhong saying he will come to pick up the divine doctor, he said he won't come anything. Late at night, the wind was a bit strong, and Shen Nanyi pulled up his coat. Get in the car first, go back and say. Jiang Zhenhong noticed her small movements and then opened the car door, gesturing for Shen Nanyi to come over. Jiang Shen let Shen Nanyi sit in first, climbed onto the passenger seat, and sat next to Qihua. As soon as he got into the car, he felt that the atmosphere inside was a bit strange. Jiang Zhenhong leaned against the back of his chair and glanced faintly at the girl beside him. Shen Nanyi showed no signs of weakness and even said to the man in a very low voice, "Brother, actually your waist is also good." Jiang Zhenhong. TSK. He pinched his fingers and silently lifted the baffle up. "Is that right? What's the use of just looking? Do you want to experience it?" "Hello coquettish. Mutual." Jiang Zhenhong let out a soft chuckle. Unable to please him, Shen Nanyi closed her mouth. Half an hour later, the car stopped in the villa area. Shen Nanyi saw the wealth and status of this land as soon as he got off the car. This location is only bought in the well-known wealthy circle of Longcheng. Every inch of land is worth every penny, and most people cannot afford it. "Nanda, this is where my cousin lives. There is a newly renovated laboratory inside, and you can use the things inside as you please." Jiang Shen is 6 years younger than Jiang Zhenhong. Due to the complex family relationships, he spent more time with his cousin when he was young, so he was more clingy to him. Although Jiang Zhenhong appears quite cold on the surface and indifferent to everyone, he is also quite attentive to this cousin. As long as he doesn't make overly demanding demands, he will basically agree. Qihua stopped the car and yawned as he got off. Hearing these words, he was completely energized. "Ha!" He pointed at Shen Nanyi. "No, Jiang Shen, this is what you call the divine doctor. Isn't this just a college student? How could it be a miracle doctor?" Jiang Shen quickly explained. After explaining in a few words, Qihua felt a little convinced. As soon as the few people entered the room, the butler poured them hot tea. After seeing Shen Nanyi, the butler's eyes almost disappeared from laughter. "This is the first time I have seen Jiang Zhenhong taking a girl home. It seems that the old man doesn't have to worry about Jiang Ye's marriage anymore." Qihua took a sip of the tea poured by the butler and asked, "How did you see that Jiang Shen was drugged?" "His medical skills are very good, but he has always studied Western medicine and is not very familiar with traditional Chinese medicine." Due to Jiang Shen's reasons, Jiang Zhenhong also has a partial understanding of medical skills, but not much. Shen Nanyi also took a sip of the hot tea in his hand upon hearing this, and spoke slowly, "I have a friend whose situation is similar to his. Now, is he okay?" Qihua couldn't help but ask. Shen Nanyi nodded. "If nothing unexpected happens, this guy is designated to have fun all over the world." Seeing this, Qihua licked his lips and leaned back a bit. "Is Jiang Shen's poison difficult to cure?" "The poison is not difficult to cure, but the required medicinal herbs are somewhat special." Jiang Zhenhong's gaze swept over Qihua and he said, "There's no problem with the medicine. You can list out the list and we can dispense the goods for you. Surprisingly, there is no problem with the medicinal herbs, so everything will be easy to handle." "Okay, give me the paper and pen." The girl put down the cup. The butler heard this and quickly brought over a notebook and pen. After receiving the item, she swiped a few strokes and handed the written prescription to Jiang Zhenhong. He looked for a few seconds and then handed it to Qihua. "I'll go, this recipe is amazing. This prescription is indeed wonderful. Although the medicine used is quite poisonous, it is just right, and it can force out the internal power of Jiang Shen's violent body." Qihua was praising Shen Nanyi, but Jiang Shen beside him felt as if he was praising himself. He proudly said, "I'll just say Nanda is amazing." Jiang Zhenhong glanced at him calmly, and Jiang Shen immediately shrank his neck. Although he is more clingy to this cousin, what he fears the most is still him. "Tomorrow you still have classes, go back to sleep." "Okay, then Nanda." Jiang Zhenhong interrupted, "I asked the butler to arrange a room." "Okay," Jiang Shen nodded and waved his hand to Shen Nanyi before returning to his room. However, Jiang, who had just returned to his room, suddenly realized something. Dig a groove. Nanda's full name is Shen Nanyi, but isn't Shen Nanyi the well-known waste lady in Longcheng? But the one downstairs. Isn't he seeing a ghost? The skills, medical skills, and appearance of the person downstairs are completely incompatible with the useless Mississippi. Jiang was completely surprised, and Qihua downstairs was also shocked. Are you really the Shen Nanyi from the Shen family? Qihua took a sip of hot water to suppress his shock. Shen Nanyi leaned against the back of the chair and yawned, otherwise. Otherwise. What else could this be? Who doesn't know about this little waste from the Shen family? Anyone who knows some gossip knows that that little waste is definitely not like the girl in front of them. Jiang Zhenhong narrowed his eyes when he saw the girl looking tired. I'll talk about other things tomorrow. He stood up and looked at Shen Nanyi. Your room is on the second floor, I'll take you there. Qihua. Oh, did you bring it yourself? What's wrong with Mr. Jiang? The next day. Shen family. Mrs. Shen's face doesn't look good now because she was overwhelmed by Shen Nan's anger yesterday. If Shen Nanyi comes back with no conscience, just kick her out for me. My Shen family doesn't have such a bad eye. When it comes to Shen Nanyi, Mrs. Shen's anger is not going well. Mom, don't be angry. Nanyi, this child is probably in a rebellious period. It's normal for him to play around a little bit, said Yupan, helping her smooth her flow. What kind of rebellious period? It's clear that the wings are hard. Mom, please calm down. This anger is not good for your health. I will talk to Nanyi well when she comes back. I will help you go upstairs to rest first. Speaking, Yudish helped Mrs. Shen upstairs. After arranging her properly, Yupan went downstairs and sat down on the sofa. After the servant poured her a cup of tea, she withdrew. Mom, did Grandma mention the surveillance footage? Shen Qi is still thinking about yesterday. We should be grateful that they have delayed the butler, otherwise what she has done will definitely be exposed. Don't worry, I paid a sealing fee, and I also had someone destroy the surveillance footage. I have taken care of everything related to parent-child testing, and no one will discover it again. Anyway, Mrs. Shen doesn't like her. When she's better, please calm her down and she won't think too much. Yupan patted her daughter's shoulder, indicating that she didn't have to worry too much. Shen Qi nodded and said, what's wrong with Shen Nanyi? She seems a bit different from before. It's not a big problem. The old lady doesn't like her at all, and with the absence of the old man, the Shen family will eventually belong to our mother and daughter. Don't worry about these things, studying hard is important. In the future, Mom will rely on you. Yudish comforted. She nodded and said, well, my mentor just asked me to go to the laboratory. I made an appointment with my senior brothers to have dinner tonight. I need to come back later. Mom, you don't have to wait for me. Okay, if my daughter really stands out, I'm afraid Shen Nanyi will affect you even if she lives with you like this. Yudish felt extremely relieved, but whenever she thought of Shen Nanyi, her teeth would itch with hatred. Click. Just as the words fell, a sound came from the door. The two instinctively turned their heads to look. Shen Nanyi leaned against the door frame, tilted her head slightly, and her fair fingers touched her chin. Oh, we're talking, she said. Yudish stood up in shock when she saw her. When did she come? How long have you been standing there? How much did you hear again? What does she want to do this time? Shen Qi's face didn't improve much either. She pursed her lips and stared at the girl at the door with a wary expression. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Brother, do you have any thoughts about me? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Brother, do you have any thoughts about me? Shen Nanyi sat down on the sofa, his lips hooked. Keep talking, why didn't you stop talking? She sat lazily and casually, leaning against the back of the chair. What did you hear? Shen Qi said coldly. Shen Nanyi raised his eyes slightly, with an unusually stubborn smile at the corner of his mouth. What do you think? Pop. The cup in Yupan's hand accidentally fell to the ground, making a crisp sound. Nan-yi, don't misunderstand. I just said it was fun. I was worried about you running out like that yesterday. It's good to come back now. I'll have the butler cook something for you. You go upstairs and wash up first. She tried to stabilize her mentality as much as possible, and the panic on her face was suppressed. Except for a slight tremble in her voice, she couldn't hear anything unusual about anything else. The servant heard the noise and quickly came over to tidy up the mess on the ground. Yupan clenched his fist. What she just said must not be told by Shen Nanyi to the old lady, otherwise she won't be able to stay at the Shen family. Shen Nanyi casually flicked his bangs and raised his eyebrows. That's not necessary. I came back to pick up something. Take something. What did she come back to get? Yudai then realized what she meant by what she said. Over the past decade or so, she and Shen Qi have been taking things out of her. Shen Qi's eyes were slightly deep. It seems that Shen Nanyi's personality has changed a lot this time after falling into a coma. Not only does she speak so fluently, but her brain has also improved significantly. Seeing the two of them not speaking, Shen Nanyi curved his lips and a sharp color flashed through his eyes. What's going on? What are you saying? We are all one family, and there is nothing in our family that belongs to you or me. Your previous belongings were just temporarily kept by Mom for you. Since you want to take them back, Mom will definitely. Shen Nanyi still wore a faint smile on his face and said, Stop calling yourself my mother. Xiaoqi, where are those things from her? Bring them to her. Yudisha's face looked ugly for a moment. Okay. Shen Qi quickly took down everything that belonged to her upstairs. My mom's necklace. Shen Nanyi glanced and then spoke lightly. I'm not here for now. I'll get it to you in a couple of days. Upon hearing this, Shen Nanyi's eyelashes drooped slightly, concealing the coldness in his eyes. Lying is not a good child, he said. Shen Qi took a deep breath and went upstairs with a cold face to take down the necklace. Everything is here, and I hope you can manage your mouth well. Shen Nanyi threw the necklace upwards, then accurately grasped it in his palm and casually said, Look at my mood. After finishing speaking, she went upstairs with her things and tidied up a few clothes before leaving the door. Shen Qi's face was extremely gloomy as he watched her leave. Mom, what is she going crazy about? Yupan shook her head and said, Be careful in the future and have less contact with her. There is a low-key black Audi parked outside the entrance of the Shen family. The delicate outline of the man faintly appeared at the car window. Seeing the girl come out, Jiang Zhenhong rolled down the car window and said, Have you taken your things? Well, let's go. Shen Nanyi nodded, opened the car door, and sat in. Is that all you have? Jiang Zhenhong glanced at the backpack she had brought over. Well, I don't have anything here. Before, Genshin Impact didn't have a good brain, and with her facial control, she spent a lot of money on any good-looking celebrities. When she went to her room to tidy up things, she also found many posters, but the things were really nothing. Upon hearing this, Jiang Zhenhong frowned and took out his phone to send a message to Qihua. An hour later, the car stopped at Ningzhuang. Ningzhuang is the name of this villa area. Your room is still the same as yesterday. I just asked Qihua to buy some essential items for you. Everything is in the room. Please take a look and see what else is missing. I'll have someone prepare it. Jiang Zhenhong leaned against the door frame, his gaze fixed on the girl. There's nothing missing, thank you, brother. Shen Nanyi sat by the bed, touching his chin with one hand, and lazily raised his eyebrows when he heard Jiang Zhenhong's words. Jiang Zhenhong curved his lips and said, Do you know your mouth is sweet at this time? The girl smiled, put on her duckbill cap, and got up to walk downstairs. As she passed by him, the girl dropped a sentence, facing the Gold Lord, your mouth naturally tastes sweet. Jiang Zhenhong. He grabbed the girl's collar and licked her back teeth. Where are you going? School. She just realized that this body still needs to go to school. Shen Nanyi finished all the courses in university at the age of 10, and asking her to go to school at this time would be like killing her. I'll see you off. Jiang Zhenhong happened to have nothing to do with this meeting. Shen Nanyi lifted the brim of his hat and gave him a quiet glance, with a mischievous smile on his lips. Brother, do you have any thoughts about me? Upon hearing this, Jiang Zhenhong almost choked on the words. Ha, come over here. Shen Nanyi runs very fast. The butler came in from outside and saw Shen Nanyi running very fast. She thought she would collide, but she didn't expect her nimble skills to avoid him. Miss Shen, have you practiced this before? He whispered in his heart. Shilin Middle School. It has been 3 days since the school started, but after Shen Nanyi fell on her head that day, the Shen family took her 3 days off. Today happens to be the 3rd day. It will be 10 o'clock in the morning, just after the 2nd class. It happens to be the break between classes. But the academic workload in the 3rd year of high school is heavy, and even after class, there are relatively few people playing around in the hallway. Class 2, Grade 3. The corner next to the trash can is very dirty, and there is also a lot of garbage thrown on the table. Shuang, I heard that Shen Nanyi made a fool of herself at your banquet yesterday. What the hell is going on? You tell us quickly. Bu Shui pulled Duan Shuang's arms and said softly. Duan Shuang is the only daughter in the family. Due to the good family conditions, she has not suffered much since childhood. She took out a small mirror to touch up her makeup, and upon hearing this, she lifted her chin arrogantly. What's so nice about a fool's story? The boy next to him looked over curiously and said, Shuang, can you tell us more about it? She loves to dress up, and with her good appearance, there are many students in the school who admire her. Alright, let me tell you all about it. Duan Shuang sat up straight. You know Shen Nanyi likes to be obsessed with men. Yesterday, a more prestigious guest came to my family's banquet, and she looked so speechless. Who knew Shen Nanyi had so much courage to rush up and hold on to the man without letting go? The guest was frightened, and while they were pushing and shoving, she accidentally fell off the stairs. TSK, she's so disgusting. She deserved to fall down from upstairs. Why didn't she die? The Shen family is really unlucky. With such a person on the street, fortunately the Shen family adopted Shen Qi, otherwise it would have been a long time ago. Come on, Shen Nanyi can't compare with my Qijie. That's right, my Qijie is someone that even old professors praise and praise. A fool like Shen Nanyi is not worthy to be associated with Qijie's name. Shen Qi is not only good-looking, but also has a good and gentle temperament. Not to mention her grades, many teachers in school like her. Students even refer to her as the school flower. Do you think Shen Nanyi will take a leave of absence this time? After all, she has done such a shameful thing. No, I heard from Chi. Damn it, it's really speechless. I feel nauseous thinking about having to be in the same class as her in the next few years. Me too. The girl sighed, as if thinking of something, and suddenly asked, can we kick her out? Shen Nanyi's grades are not good anyway and she looks ugly. I don't think many people like her, so why not kick her out? I'll go, you can do this, but how can you get her out? Bu Shui's eyes rolled and she said, I have a solution. You guys come over and let me tell you. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Nanda's Anger. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Nanda's anger. Shen Nanyi didn't let Jiang Zhenhong take her to school. When she came out of Ningzhuang, she took a taxi and arrived during break time. Anyway, I already told the homeroom teacher before coming, so it doesn't delay anything. As soon as he entered the school gate, Shen Nanyi heard the students discussing the currently popular esports players. His performance yesterday was really cool, that operation was like opening a cheat. Let me tell you what, I had the privilege of matching with Brother Lu's nickname once before, and the whole process was a lying down win. When I landed, I picked up a handgun and didn't do anything else. Soon, I was lucky. Come on, stop boasting. I'm not really boasting. I've matched Brother Lu before, but his playing style is even more aggressive than usual. Friends don't believe in their words at all. Shen Nanyi touched his nose and quickly walked over when he heard the two of them talking. They should be talking about Lu Zhan. I didn't expect him to be so popular. However, is her playing style really that fierce? According to memory, she arrived in the classroom 5 minutes later. Class 2, Grade 3. As soon as Shen Nanyi entered, the class suddenly fell silent. I'll go, who is this girl? It looks even more beautiful than the school flower Shen Qi. She couldn't have gone to the wrong class, could she? The girl scanned the classroom and quickly locked her gaze on the dirty and messy corner at the end. Seeing Shen Nanyi walking towards the corner, the eyes of the class all showed disbelief. Later on, everyone reacted. Is she Shen Nanyi? But how could this be possible? Shen Nanyi used to like to have long bangs to cover her eyes, and because she didn't know how to dress or match, few people actually saw Shen Nanyi's appearance, so naturally they thought she wasn't good looking. But today Shen Nanyi is wearing a school uniform, her hair tied into a high ponytail, revealing a smooth forehead, and her black and beautiful apricot eyes add a touch of color to her. Damn it! Is it fake? The girl who was just roast about Shen Nan's ugliness closed her mouth. Shen Nanyi didn't pay attention to these gazes and walked calmly towards his seat. Just then, one foot reached out. Shen Nanyi raised his eyebrows and stepped directly on it. Ah! With great strength, the boy screamed in pain. Shen Nanyi! You're sick. Oh, I'm not sick enough to extend my foot like you do for me to step on. The boy was momentarily stunned. Didn't Shen Nanyi still say that he couldn't speak fluently before? How can this be so harsh on people? The people in the class share the same idea as the boy. Shen Nanyi didn't care what they thought, took out a tissue from his pocket, wiped the table clean, and then lay on the table, closing his eyes to rest. As soon as she lay down, everyone in the class was whispering. Why did she suddenly speak so fluently? Is it difficult to fall and still make her smarter? Do you think she looks much better than before? I feel like she's even more beautiful than the school flower, especially with her imposing demeanor. When she first came in, my legs were going weak. You know how to pack. Upon hearing the voices of discussion around him, Shuang's expression was unusually ugly. So what if you look better? You're not a fool with poor grades. How can you compare yourself to Shen Qi? Indeed, Shen Qi is proficient in chess, calligraphy, and painting. Every year in school competitions, it is Shen Qi who brings honor to the school. As soon as these words were spoken, the surroundings quieted down again. Yes, even if it's good looking, it's just a vase. Without strength, it deserves to be looked down upon. After the third class, it was time for a break between classes. Shen Nanyi looked at the papers that were handed out and her head grew bigger. My original grades were not very good, I only scored a dozen or so in English. Even if it's a mistake, it's impossible to get this score. Casually scanning the test paper, Shen Nanyi had already figured out the answer in her heart. However, she is relatively lazy and doesn't want to change the exam paper. She propped her hand on her chin, took out her phone, and opened the game. Just as I finished ringing, the class bell rang. This class happens to be in English, and the teacher is a woman in her early 30s, surnamed Yi. Because of her gentle speech, many students like her. Teacher Yi walked up to the podium with a lesson plan and said to the students below, I have already handed out last week's papers. In this class, we will talk about new content. Everyone should listen carefully and not wander. As the third year of high school approaches the college entrance examination, teachers hope to finish the content as soon as possible, so that they have more time to review. There was a student dozing off in the audience. Teacher Yi glanced at him and saw him immediately. She frowned and smashed a chalk head over. Hiss. Li Zhe, are you dozing off again? Although you speak gently, it's not right to take a break in class. Teacher Yi frowned and pointed to the blackboard. Did you understand what I just said? Surprisingly, could you read this passage and translate what it means? Li Zhe is the boy who just planned to trip up Shen Nanyi. He was just dozing off, how to pronounce this sentence. Besides, he always paddles in class. With a turn of his gaze, he looked at Shen Nanyi who was yawning and said, Teacher Yi, I just lost my mind, but I think Shen Nanyi listens attentively. How about you let her translate? Jokes, Shen Nanyi can't even speak fluently, how could he possibly translate what this means? Teacher Yi frowned and just as he was about to say goodbye, Shuang lazily raised his hand and said, Teacher, I think we should give Shen a chance. She came over this morning and spoke quite fluently. Maybe Shen also wants you to pay attention to her, teacher. This statement is quite reasonable. Class is already boring, and it's rare to find a way to relieve it. Students naturally won't give up this opportunity to mock Shen Nanyi, and they will all agree and speak out. Teacher Yi nodded and looked at Shen Nanyi with a gentle gaze. Student Shen, surprisingly, everyone supports you so much. So, could you translate what this passage means? Upon hearing this, Shen Nanyi stood up and glanced blankly at Li Zhe and the others. Shuang lifted his chin and looked at her provocatively. Shen Nanyi glanced at the blackboard, speaking fluently and with extremely accurate pronunciation, finished reading the words on the blackboard and translated them. Teacher Yi was surprised and said, the translation is very accurate. Shen, please sit down first, classmates. That's what this sentence means. Let's take a look at the next paragraph. After Shen Nanyi sat down, he continued to doze off with his hand supporting his chin. Listening to classes or something is really tiring. The whole class is now focused on Shen Nanyi. Shuang almost bit his silver teeth. How could Shen Nanyi really know this part? Her expression was extremely ugly, and she glared at Shen Nanyi with a gloomy expression. However, the latter lazily met her gaze and gestured towards her with a middle finger. Shuang. After a class, Teacher Yi still appreciated Shen Nanyi greatly. In the future, listen carefully to the class. The teacher believes that your grades will improve. If you have any questions, feel free to come to me anytime. Okay, thank you, teacher. After Teacher Yi left, Shuang quickly walked up to Shen Nanyi and suddenly picked up the things on her table and threw them onto the ground. As soon as something landed, the class members clearly felt a change in the atmosphere around them. Shen Nanyi held her arm and licked her lips, her eyes cold and evil. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Is the South-South War so fierce? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Is the South-South War so fierce? The people in the classroom felt the cold air emanating from Shen Nanyi and unconsciously buried their heads in reading, afraid that she would stare at them. Shuang realized something was wrong and his face turned a bit pale, but he still raised his chin high. What are you looking at? Don't think that if you speak fluently, you can really do whatever you want, and don't look at yourself. Shen Nanyi's indifferent eyes fixed and he stood up casually. As the pace approached, Shuang also felt the danger and instinctively wanted to step back. But, the next second, the girl appeared in front of her, her cold eyes fixed on her, and she said casually, "You're the first one to dare to throw my thing." Shen Nanyi is the youngest among her friends, but her strength is stronger than theirs. No one in the research room dares to disrespect her. She is usually quite casual and seems easy to talk about, but in reality, no one can stop her when she moves. If friends who know Shen Nanyi see this scene, they know she is really angry. Shuang tried his best to make his expression look more natural, but fear couldn't be hidden. What do you want, you? Ah. Shen Nanyi pulled up Shuang's collar, lifted him up, and fiercely pressed him onto the table. She casually tugged her lips and said, "Oh, I'll beat you up." Shen Nanyi. What are you doing? Let go of Shuang. The female classmates around were startled and hurriedly approached to pull Shen Nanyi. However, swept away by the girl's cold gaze, they immediately dared not approach. In the future, please keep your mouth clean and don't provoke me if you have nothing to do. I don't show any propriety in my actions. Shuang is a pampered young lady in the family, who has never seen such a scene before. She would have been so scared that she would have cried out. No matter what Shen Nanyi said, she would just nod her head. The girl released the person and took out the wet tissue she often carried in her pocket to wipe her fingers. This looks like Shuang is something dirty. With Shen Nanyi's actions, the classroom's understanding of her has been refreshed. No one dared to provoke her until the end of the morning class. After the morning class ended, Shen Nanyi strolled to the playground. There were too many people in the cafeteria, and she didn't want to squeeze, so she decided to buy a bread from the small shop. She took a bite of the bread and lowered her head to look at WeChat. She has very few contacts on WeChat, except for Mr. Shen, who just added Jiang Zhenhong and Qihua yesterday, as well as Jiang Shen and the other three. There are two messages above, one from Jiang Zhenhong and the other from Jiang Shen. Jiang Zhenhong. The medicine you need is available overseas, and it should be delivered in about 3 days. Jiang Zhenhong. If you need any help at school, feel free to contact Jiang Shen. Okay. You are a little brother. Jiang Zhenhong was currently looking at his phone and quickly came back after seeing the information. Have you eaten yet? I paid for your meal card before you arrived, just swipe it. Shen Nanyi didn't pay attention to her meal schedule. Upon hearing this, she replied in a good mood, "Thank you, brother." She exited the page and flipped through Jiang Shen's message. Jiang Shen. Nandad, I'm in class 4. If you're not used to staying in class 2, you can switch to my class. She leaned lazily against the back of the tree. I do have this plan. The people in class 2 have too many small hands and feet, which is quite annoying. With this in mind, she quickly disposed of the bread in her hand and got up to return to the classroom. Most of the teachers in the office have gone to eat, with only a few homeroom teachers present. Teacher Yi thought of Shen Nanyi's performance today and decided to talk to the class teacher of class 2 about this matter to avoid delaying their child's learning. The homeroom teacher of class 2 is a middle-aged man who was transferred from a school out of town and has the surname Bai. Before he was transferred, he taught genius classes. But since he came to this school, although the class he taught had good results, he still had a bad pot of porridge because of a rat's excrement. Did you just say that Shen Nanyi speaks good English? Is it fake? She usually doesn't speak fluently, how could she possibly speak English? Teacher Bai doesn't believe what she said. What kind of person does Shen Nanyi not know? It's okay if you don't speak fluently, but you still do some embarrassing things. Teacher Yi explained, no, her performance was still very good today. Many people in the class have heard her. I think you can also pay more attention to her, Teacher Bai. Shen Nanyi's situation is actually quite pitiful. Okay, if her grades improve in the future, I will pay more attention to her, said Teacher Bai casually as she was busy reviewing the lesson plan. After the afternoon class ended, Shen Nanyi received a message from Jiang Shen asking her to wait for him to leave. With nothing to do, she took out her phone and checked the news of Lu Zhan on Dunyang. This man's actions are still as naughty as ever. After deleting the information she just found, she clicked on the game and started playing it. Jiang Shen seems to be procrastinating in class. She has even started 2 games, and Jiang Shen has not finished class yet. As she started the 3rd round, the footsteps behind her approached. Shen Nanyi's eyes were slightly cold, and he turned his head to look. This person has good skills. She didn't hear the sound until she was almost approaching. South, how fierce is it? The man approached and bent his finger, nodding the back of the chair with a smile in his voice. Why did you come? Shen Nanyi withdrew from the game and turned to look at Jiang Zhenhong with confusion. Pick you up. Jiang Zhenhong smiled and said casually, he still has a few minutes left for class. Let's go to the car first. Line. She put away her phone and followed the man. A few minutes later, Jiang Shen finally finished class. Damn it, I dragged on for 10 minutes. Jiang Shen threw his backpack at the passenger seat, furrowing his brow lightly and speaking in a somewhat unpleasant tone. He originally intended to sit in the back seat, but Jiang Zhenhong was there, and Jiang Shen made a hard turn. Let's take you to eat first. Jiang Zhenhong glanced at his phone. As soon as he heard something to eat, Jiang Shen's resentment disappeared instantly. As long as my cousin treats me, it means there will be a big meal to eat. Okay. He fastened his seatbelt and remained silent in peace. The car quickly stopped at the entrance of the restaurant, and a few people got off and entered the restaurant. However, shortly after they entered, a car also stopped here. The person getting off the car was the man who was entangled by Shen Nanyi at the banquet 2 days ago. Shuang and Shen Qi got off the car with him. Shuang and Yu Xian may not have noticed Shen Nanyi, but Shen Qi saw it very clearly. She clenched her palm and stared fixedly at the back of Shen Nanyi and the others who had just left. Who are those 2 men? It looks impressive, but the car I drive is very low-key. Is it difficult to be the boss of a certain company? But how could Shen Nanyi know them? She stood in place, frowning and thinking. Chi-Chi, what are you looking at? The 2 families have always had contact, so the relationship between Shuang and Shen Qi is very good. Shen Qi withdrew his gaze and shook his head, it's nothing. The taste of this restaurant is good, and many people like to come here to eat, but it's difficult to make an appointment. Yu Xian smiled appropriately and led them into the restaurant. Shen Qi held the small bag and spoke softly, Brother Yu, I'm sorry for what my sister did a few days ago. I apologize to you on her behalf. That's her fault, you don't have to apologize. With one hand in his pocket, Yu Xian felt nauseous at the thought of Shen Nanyi's name. Yes, Chi-Chi, it's Shen Nanyi's fault, and it's none of your business. Shuang also comforted her. She took Shen Qi's arm and roasted about what happened at school today. What? She even hit you today. Shen Qi is quite strange. What's going on with Shen Nanyi? Why is he so fond of taking action now? Yesterday at the hospital, not only did I physically beat Mrs. Shen, but I also scared you dish. Yeah, look at the injury on my face, it's all her fault. As Shuang spoke, he showed the wound to Shen Qi. I apologize to you on behalf of my sister, and I will talk to her carefully when I return. Shen Qi whispered, but there was another expression hidden in his eyes. Shuang has already planned to arrange for someone else to clean up Shen Nanyi tomorrow, but he didn't pay much attention to Shen Qi's words. New literature, don't nourish literature seeking collection and tickets Mr. Gu, all of that will be sent out tomorrow, end of this chapter. Chapter 7. The Sealing of the General Information Community. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. The Sealing of the General Information Community. The restaurant in Jiangxin Hongding is located on the side by the window because you can see the scenery outside, and the location here is usually more expensive. Similarly, it is also difficult to book. After taking his seat, Jiang Zhenhong picked a few light dishes. Shen Nanyi prefers spicy food. After seeing the dishes he ordered, he frowned and asked, are there no spicy dishes here? The man smiled casually and said, yes, but your head injury is not good. You can't touch spicy food for now. Shen Nanyi. TSK. Surprisingly, it couldn't be spicy, so Shen Nanyi simply pushed the menu to Jiang Shen. Jiang Shen casually picked a few dishes and gave the menu to the waiter. When the dishes came over, Shen Nanyi noticed that Jiang Shenhong had even ordered desserts. Try this. The man moved the dessert to Shen Nanyi. Shen Nanyi took a few bites and found that the taste was good, with a smile on his eyebrows and eyes, and his mood was much happier. After having a good meal, she went to the restroom. When I came out to wash my hands, I found Shen Qi waiting at the door. Shen Nanyi, what's wrong with you? You can also come into this place like this. The girl squinted her eyes and lifted her duckbill cap up. People like you can come, why can't I? Upon hearing her words, Shen Qi's face turned ugly. Who were those two men just now? Did you have the same old habit again? Shen Qi frowned and looked at her with disdain in her eyes. Can't you be calm? You're going to lose face in our Shen family. The phone in his pocket vibrated, and Shen Nanyi took it out and glanced at it, ignoring Shen Qi. Jiang Zhenhong. South, I just packed a dessert for you. She glanced and replied, thank you, brother. I'll pack up and go back. She put her phone in her pocket, and Shen Nanyi lowered her eyebrows and eyes, slowly rolling up her sleeves. Seeing Shen Nanyi's operation, Shen Qi had a bad premonition in his heart. What do you want to do? Is it difficult for her to think of taking action against herself? Eyebrow raised lightly, I just manually made you shut up. Shen Qi. She really wanted to hit her. Shen Qi calmly took a step back and said, Shen Nanyi, don't act recklessly. What I just said was the truth. If you do these shameful things, Grandpa will be disappointed with you. Shen Nanyi looked up lightly and pinched her face with his hand. Shameful thing. Isn't this still fabricated by your mouth? What nonsense. It's just a fact. Shen Nanyi, please let go of Shen Qi. Yu Xian saw that Shen Qi had not returned for so long, so he planned to come and take a look. He didn't expect to see Shen Nanyi take action against Shen Qi. Shen Nanyi is really stubborn. He took a few steps forward and pulled Shen Qi towards his side, watching Shen Nanyi with caution and disdain. You're really shameless. I didn't bother you at the banquet last time, but you still chased me to the hotel this time. Upon hearing Yu Xian's words, Shen Nanyi almost laughed angrily. What the hell is all this talking about? This man is probably the ceiling of the general education world. Why is your face so big? What are you saying? Tisk, forget about having a big face, I didn't expect to be deaf. She let out a soft click and looked at him with pity in her eyes. Shen Nanyi. When did this woman's mouth say so much? You deserve to be abandoned by both your parents. No wonder Mrs. Shen wants you to leave the Shen family. After Mr. Shen's 100 years, I think you can still. Ah. Before Yu Xian could finish his angry words, a sharp blade flew over his ear. The piercing pain from the tip of his ear made Yu Xian's legs weak in fear. Brother Yu. Shen Qi covered his mouth and exclaimed in surprise. Shen Nanyi inserted his pocket with one hand, looking indifferent and lazy, with a slight coldness on the curve of his lips. If you don't want it, I don't mind taking it off for you. Watching Shen Nanyi like this, Yu Xian realized that the girl in front of him had really changed a lot compared to before. He covered his bleeding ears and looked at Shen Nanyi with a shocked expression. How dare you take action against me? Aren't you afraid that I'll retaliate against you when I go back? Yu Xiao, who are you trying to retaliate against? Before Shen Nanyi could utter a word, a deep and scattered voice came. Subconsciously, Yu Xian turned his head to look at the man who caught his eye, with a graceful figure and calm steps. He approached and lowered his gaze slightly, scanning him. At this glance, it was enough to make Yu Xian tremble with fear. Jiang Yi. Why is this master here? Jiang Zhenhong has a great reputation because of his ruthless methods. As long as he participates in the competition, no one dares to shoot him. A few iron-headed individuals have also tried, but without exception, they all lost. He usually only appears in the capital, but he rarely appears in such small cities. He will appear in Longqing this time. I'm afraid there might be some big moves here. Who did you just say you wanted to retaliate against? The man asked repeatedly, with a hint of danger in his tone. Jiang Zhenhong walked up to Shen Nanyi's side, lowered his gaze to look at her a few times, pulled the girl behind him, and whispered, "Did you hurt her?" "No, my brother," the hero saved the beauty in a timely manner. The girl hooked her lips, and the cold breath on her body dissipated a bit. When Yu Xian saw Jiang Zhenhong coming over, he was completely scared. His legs were already weak, and he almost knelt down on the ground. He hesitated for a long time before finally saying, "Mr. Jiang, this is all a misunderstanding. I didn't know she knew you." "If he knew, how dare Yu Xian talk to her like this?" "Misunderstanding, who told you it was a misunderstanding?" "I heard what you just said very clearly." The man gave him a sidelong glance, then suddenly smiled and glanced lightly at Shen Qi. The girl's body was trembling with fear, she lowered her head and dared not look at him. The cold sweat flowed down Yu Xian's body, and he carefully glanced at Jiang Zhenhong before finally turning his gaze to Shen Nanyi. He took a few steps forward and bowed 90 degrees before saying something to Shen Nanyi. "Miss Shen, I apologize for my remarks just now and hope you can forgive me." Yu Xian's main focus is on being able to bend and stretch. Shen Nanyi heard this and said in a slow and melodious tone, "Forget it, the dog barked at me a few times. I can't call him back, do you think so, brother? This little kid's mouth is really poisonous." "You're right, let's go. The dessert you requested is packed for you, let's go back." Jiang Zhenhong raised his eyebrows, very in agreement with her words. Upon hearing Shen Nanyi implicating himself, Yu Xian dared not say anything. He watched helplessly as the two of them left, then stood up and slammed his hand heavily against the wall, his face turning pale with iron. "Brother Yu." Shen Qi had never seen such a Yu Xian before. She pinched the hem of her skirt and spoke cautiously. "What's going on? How did Shen Nanyi know Jiang Yi?" Shen Qi also wanted to know. She shook her head and said, "I'm not sure, but my sister likes good-looking men. You know, brother Yu. I think it might be because my sister used some other means to." She didn't finish speaking when she was interrupted by Yu Xian. "Impossible, Mr. Jiang is not a man who can be lured by any means. Especially Shen Nanyi." Yu Xian let out a moan, covering his ears with one hand and calling the driver to take him out to the hospital to bandage his wound. "It's really bad every time I meet Shen Nanyi. Could you please take a taxi back later, Miss Shen? I'll leave first if I have something to do." Seeing that Yu Xian's attitude towards him had become cold and indifferent, Shen Qi clenched his palm and gave a soft and gentle greeting. After the person left, she took out her phone and logged into the dark web, posting a task on it. After waiting for a few seconds, when she saw someone taking the order, she finally had a smile in her eyes. "Don't waste your time writing, leave more messages." End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Unmanned Laboratory. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Unmanned Laboratory Ningzhuang. Returning from there, Shen Nanyi sat cross-legged on the sofa and played games with Jiang Shen. On the coffee table, there were also desserts that she had eaten halfway through. Nan daddy, help me. I'm running out of blood." Jiang Shen held his phone and cried and howled. Shen Nanyi raised his eyebrows lightly and said, "Don't howl, here we are." A few minutes later, words of good luck appeared on the screen, and Jiang Shen's smile was almost on the back of his head. Hee, it's true that my Nan dad is still impressive. What are you two doing? With the sound of footsteps, Jiang Zhenhong came down from upstairs and saw that the two had originally agreed to do homework, but now they were playing games happily. The words of the two little brats are really unbelievable. Cousin, I think Nandad's gaming skills are even stronger than yours. Jiang Shen hasn't realized anything yet. Jiang Zhenhong glanced at the homework on the desk and said, so that's why you played games for an hour. We will write it now, and we can definitely finish it before 12 o'clock. Jiang Shen shrank his neck and became honest. Shen Nanyi picked up the unfinished dessert on the coffee table, and just as he was about to take a bite, he noticed the man's meaningful gaze. Brother, I'll write after I finish this. I don't know why, I always feel like this man is like her grandfather. Especially when it comes to managing her. Quickly finishing what was in her hand, she sat up straight and sat in line with Jiang Shen to do her homework. Seeing that the two of them were honest, Jiang Zhenhong went to the living room and made a phone call. About 10 minutes later, Qihua returned with a wooden box. Shen Nanyi smelled a faint scent of medicine and turned her head to look over. You can come over to read after finishing your homework. Jiang Zhenhong casually covered the box. Cut, be stingy. Shen Nanyi started writing a bit faster. Jiang Shen looked over and found that the test paper she had done was the same as herself. He couldn't help but smile and quickly whispered. Nandad, lend me a copy quickly. I have arranged for Qiangzi and his team to go online and play games later. I can't finish writing before 12 o'clock. Shen Nanyi generously moved the paper towards him. Noticing the small movements of the two, Jiang Zhenhong helplessly supported his forehead. Oh, doing homework. Qihua glanced at the two people sitting in rows, then withdrew his gaze and whispered to Jiang Zhenhong, Mr. Jiang, have you ever heard of the infernal laboratory? What's going on? I heard that their laboratory's boss is gone, not in a car accident. Jiang Zhenhong took a sip of water and leaned back in his chair, lazily looking up at the words. Is the news accurate? Qihua looked up and said, didn't I go to pick up the goods today? I heard from the other side that this news has 80% accuracy, but it's really a pity. He's so powerful and he just disappeared in a car accident. I thought I could cooperate with him before. Tear it apart. Shen Nanyi's hand snapped and she accidentally punctured the exam paper. Nanda, are you tired of writing? Jiang Shen thought she was feeling sleepy, that's why. Shen Nanyi put down his pen, picked up the water on the table and took a sip. It's a bit. Jiang Zhenhong glanced at them and then lowered his head to look at time. 11:45, he frowned and raised his hand to signal that Qihua would discuss the matter later. He stood up and approached Shen Nanyi, how much is still missing? A test paper. Shen Nanyi raised his exam paper and frowned. Sit over here. The man sat down and took a photo of the empty seat next to him. The girl smiled and immediately sat over with her test paper. Jiang Shen looked at Shen Nanyi and then at Qihua, who had the same bewildered expression. Damn it, cousin, is this a case of being possessed by evil? Late at night. After washing up, Shen Nanyi wiped her hair with a dry towel and opened the computer on the table. The game screen is also displayed on the page. Shen Nanyi didn't pay attention and lowered her eyebrows, still thinking about what Qihua had just said. The news of her death was suppressed, and the only group who spread her news was the one who had been fighting against their laboratory. Hello, babies, good evening. A familiar voice sounded, instantly interrupting Shen Nanyi's thoughts. She looked up at the computer and realized that she had accidentally clicked into the broadcast room just now. It's really a coincidence that the live broadcast room of Lu Zhan was opened perfectly. He usually broadcasts at this point. Men have a very well-behaved appearance, but they prefer to dye strange and quirky colors. At first, some people sprayed him with this hair color, but when they saw Lu Zhan's technique, the sprayers closed their mouths. Anyway, you're strong, it doesn't matter if you dye 7 colors. Lu Zhan's hair color this time is purple, fortunately his appearance is good, otherwise it would definitely be a car accident scene. He also wore an earring on his left ear, which is the letter N. Shen Nanyi stared at his earrings a little longer. The bullet screen was covered with the words "husband looks at me." Lu Zhan's popularity is really not diminished from the past. Staring at Lu Zhan's live broadcast for a while, towards the end, Shen Nanyi yawned and still posted a barrage. The sense of cooperation is too weak. She thought that such a short sentence would not be noticed by anyone. After all, it was about to be aired, and fans were all scrolling through good night and so on. Her sentence is very likely to be scrolled down. However, the situation was so dramatic that Lu Zhan immediately noticed her words. Her pretty eyebrows furrowed, and there was an indescribable excitement on his face. He hurriedly said, "Download," and then quickly clicked on Shen Nanyi's homepage for a private chat. Nanda. Shen Nanyi raised an eyebrow when she saw this sentence. "How did you notice it, Lu Zhan? Except for you, no one in the circle dares to say this to me." Lu Zhan. "Nanda, where have you been? Why do all your contact information show that it's turned off? I went to your house to look for it, but there's no one at home and it seems like someone has touched it. The handle I sent you was all broken. Someone flipped through her room." Shen Nanyi frowned and said, "When did you go?" Lu Zhan. "Just 2 days ago." Lu Zhan. "Nanda, where the hell have you been? I asked your brother, but he didn't reply to my message. This posture just doesn't let me take care of this matter." Shen Nanyi dragged her cheeks and played with the comb in her hand, pondering for a moment before replying, "Don't worry about this, just play your game honestly." After replying to this sentence, she went offline and did not respond to any messages sent by Ren Luzhan. The next day. Class 2, Grade 3. After Shen Nanyi's few moves a few days ago, not many people dare to trouble her anymore. The girl lay on the table to catch her sleep. The computer she took away from the Shen family had poor performance. It took her a whole night of tinkering yesterday to slightly increase its speed. To recover to the same level as your own computer, it requires a lot of things. But now the most important thing is still making money. Without money, nothing can be achieved. I slept for only 4 hours last night, and Shen Nanyi felt so sleepy that she couldn't even open her eyes. Someone walked outside the classroom, with a strong posture. They came to the girl's desk and kicked Shen Nanyi's desk. The girl looked up drowsily, supported her chin with her hand, lifted her eyelids, and a chill filled her eyes. "What's up?" Seeking collection, treasures, don't dwell on literature. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Shen Nanyi, more like a stinger than a stinger. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Shen Nanyi, more like a stinger than a stinger. I heard you bullied Shen Qi yesterday. The person who came was exactly Shen Qi's brainless fan. Shen Qi, due to her good looks and intelligence, has many fans. Most of the boys in the school knelt under her pomegranate skirt. Watching Shen Qi's eyes turn red as she spoke with grievances about being bullied by Shen Nanyi yesterday, her admirers couldn't sit still in an instant. Seeing that class hadn't started yet, they rushed to class 2 to settle accounts with Shen Nanyi. Upon hearing this, Shen Nanyi lowered her eyelids slightly and met the gaze of the others. After a moment's pause, she withdrew her gaze and lazily yawned, "So you're here to seek revenge?" Her tone was a bit playful. "You can tell the truth." Several tall boys surrounded Shen Nanyi. The students in the class hesitated whether to go find the teacher when they saw this scene. Shuang put on lipstick and said lightly, "Let her solve the problem she caused herself. What should I ask the teacher to do? Isn't it embarrassing enough?" Shuang was eager for Shen Nanyi to be picked up by this group of people. Upon hearing Shuang's words, they dared not call the teacher anymore. "If you come with us and apologize to Shen Qi, we will let you go." The boy led by him looks quite handsome, with his school uniform zippered up, giving him a somewhat mischievous look. This type of student has always been a thorn in the head at school. Shen Nanyi didn't even lift his eyelids and looked down at his subordinate's papers. The paper was the one taught by Jiang home yesterday, and the man helped her write an analysis on it. The handwriting was clear and concise, just like others. Seeing the girl motionless, the boy felt embarrassed and grabbed the paper from her desk, throwing it on the ground and stomping on it. What kind of test paper are you looking at with such trash grades? It's embarrassing, he said while stomping hard, muttering, you come out with me quickly, otherwise I don't mind cleaning you up in the classroom. Qingjuan's handwriting is scattered, and the paper is fragmented. In an instant, the temperature in the air seemed to drop straight to freezing point. The curve of Shen Nanyi's lips is so cold that it can make people tremble. She stood up, kicked away the stool under her, lazily looked up, boastful and mischievous, friend, you're quite crazy. The boy felt the strong aura on the girl's body and realized something was wrong. He swallowed his saliva and took a step back without leaving a trace. What do you want to do? I advise you to be honest and go find Shen Qi with me to apologize. The girl sneered and lowered her eyes, with a cold expression between her eyebrows. Apologize. With one hand pinching his throat, the boy felt lifted up and the air became thin. His face turned red and he pounced, Shen Nanyi, you let go of me. Shen Nanyi didn't pay attention, and his subordinates added a few more forces, pressing the person to the ground with their face pressed against the ground. Ah! The boy screamed in pain. A few people gathered around to help, but without exception, Shen Nanyi kicked them away. Damn it, when will Shen Nanyi be able to fight like this? This is the only thought in the hearts of a few people. Upon seeing this scene, Shuang had an idea and whispered to the boy next to him. The man nodded and quickly ran to the office. You're too weak, you lackey. The girl's merciless mockery made the boy feel ashamed, and he was filled with anger, but Shen Nanyi's skills left him helpless. If you have the ability, let go of me. Shen Nanyi casually stepped on the back of his hand and said, I'm sorry, I don't have the ability. Someone next to me couldn't help but laugh when they heard these words. The boy's ears turned red when he heard this mockery. Especially when the girl was still exerting force under her feet, he was in excruciating pain and had to beg for mercy. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I shouldn't have stepped on your test paper just now. I'm sorry, Nanda, please let go of me first. Pick up the test paper for me. Shen Nanyi raised his foot and was about to release the person when the angry roar of teacher bite came from outside. What are you all doing around here? As soon as he entered, he saw the scene of Shen Nanyi stepping on the school's spiky head, and teacher bite felt his blood pressure rise. He pointed at Shen Nanyi and shouted angrily, Shen Nanyi. You're causing trouble for me again. Call your parents for me. Fan Yuan. You also call your parents for me, and you guys, get out of the office. After shouting, Teacher Bai went to the office with his hands behind his back. Just looking at his back, he knew he was very angry. Shen Nanyi released the person and casually touched his nose. Fan Yuan got up from the ground, and out of fear of Shen Nanyi, he bent down to pick up the test paper that he had stepped on. Looking at the tattered paper on the table, he swallowed his saliva and said, I'll try my best to clean it up for you later. Seeing Shen Nanyi nod, he breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. A few people were preparing to go to the office, but just a few steps away, Shen Nanyi grabbed Fan Yuan's school uniform collar. I'll know what to say later, right? Said the person with a casual gaze and a low and dangerous voice. Fan Yuan nodded repeatedly. The students in the class saw this scene and felt that Shen Nanyi looked more like a thorn in the head than Fan Yuan. Office. 10 minutes later. Fan Yuan's parents rushed to the school. Several students stood in rows in the office, with Teacher Bai holding hands behind his back and looking at these people with a big head. It's almost time for the college entrance examination. Why are you fighting if you don't study hard? When he said this, his remaining light kept looking at Shen Nanyi. Fan Yuan's parents felt heartbroken when they saw the injury on their son's body, and their eyes towards Shen Nanyi were particularly resentful. Teacher Bai is right. What kind of fight are you fighting? Fan Yuan lowered his head and didn't dare to look at Shen Nanyi. We're just playing around, he said. Nonsense, why is Shen Nanyi pinching your neck for fun? The matter of pinching his neck, Teacher Bai listened to the students in the class. Upon hearing these words, Fan Yuan's parents became angry. He frowned and slapped the table fiercely, saying, "It's really amazing. How dare you bully my child like this? I tell you, if you don't call your parents to compensate for mental damages today, I won't let you go." After finishing this, he turned his head to look at Teacher Bai and said, "Teacher Bai, shouldn't this bullying of classmates in your school be expulsion?" Teacher Bai comforted, "Yes, I will. I can definitely handle such a bad student like Shen Nanyi well. Please calm down. Teacher Bai, we're really joking around, and it's my fault. I shouldn't tear her paper." Noticing Shen Nanyi's sweeping gaze, Fan Yuan wished he could leave the office quickly. However, Fan Yuan's parents did not care. When they arrived, they received a letter stating that as long as Shen Nanyi was expelled from school, they would receive 200,000 yuan. This 200,000 yuan is really a lot for ordinary families like them. So no matter what, they have to drive Shen Nanyi out and get that 200,000 yuan. Even so, she shouldn't have hit my family. Fan Yuan. The man's indifferent gaze stared straight at Shen Nanyi. "Teacher Bai, you must give me an explanation today." Teacher Bai nodded and said, "I understand." He looked sideways at Shen Nanyi. "You've caused me a lot of trouble these past few times, and this time it's particularly serious. You openly hit your classmates and even killed them. Our school can't have students like you. You go back and pack up your things and go home." Shen Nan raised his eyes expressionlessly and said, "Teacher Bai only listens to one-sided words." "What is a one-sided word? I don't know what kind of person you are yet." "Alright, stop talking. Hurry up and pack your things for me and get back home. I'll do it later." Before Teacher Bai could finish speaking, the door was kicked open by someone. Then, a careless voice came in. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Shen Nanyi, Small Waist from Class 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Shen Nanyi, Small Waist from Class 2. Oh, Teacher Bai is quite imposing. He wants to drive out the students without even asking the reason clearly. Someone kicked the door with their foot raised, and the sound was melodious. When I saw Chihua a few times ago, he was wearing a white coat. Today, he is different from before, dressed very casually, and even wearing an extremely flamboyant necklace around his neck. Qi Xiao. Chihua is a member of the Qi family in the capital city. His older brother started his own business outside and gained a great reputation. As a younger brother, he is naturally not bad. Previously, he went out to work as a borderless doctor for 3 years due to his family's anger. Due to his excellent medical skills, he is a figure that many people in the community want to curry favor with. Teacher Bai trembled with fear when he saw Chihua. But what surprised him even more was still to come. Behind Chihua was a man with a very good figure and a pair of glasses on his delicate face. The wind outside the door blew his black windbreaker up, revealing his long and straight legs. Jiang Zhenhong's momentum is very strong. If it weren't for the lenses blocking him, Teacher Bai could have knelt directly for him. Jiang Yi. What exactly happened today? When did these two gentlemen come to Longcheng? Okay, did you come back to his office? And listening to Chihua's tone, they seemed to have come for Shen Nanyi. Thinking of this possibility, he widened his eyes and looked at Shen Nanyi in surprise. No, I don't. When Teacher Bai saw Jiang Zhenhong, his legs became weak and he couldn't speak fluently. Chihua pulled a chair for Jiang Zhenhong and said, "Jiang Yi, sit down." "Nanyi, what's going on?" "We just received a message from Jiang Shen and rushed over." South means. Is this still so affectionate? Jiang Zhenhong didn't sit down. After entering, he walked up to the girl and lowered his eyes to look at her. Are you injured? If tidying up such a character would hurt her, she might be laughed to death by the people in her own laboratory. The girl shook her head and stood in an inappropriate position, leaning against the wall with her left leg standing and her right leg bent. No. Teacher Bai roughly explained the process of the incident on the side. The chair was handed to Shen Nanyi by Jiang Zhenhong to sit on. Upon hearing this, his gaze fell on Fan Yuan and he said, "What's going on?" The aura on the man's body was too strong, and Fan Yuan was just a student. He had never seen such a scene before, so he immediately trembled and told the story. After listening, Teacher Bai's face turned pale and he was sweating profusely on his forehead. The faces of Fan Yuan's parents on the side were not much better. I thought it would be easy to get that 200,000 yuan, but I didn't expect a Cheng Yao Jin to come out halfway. Teacher Bai, you're a bit incompetent as a homeroom teacher. Chi Hua leaned against the wall, his lazy tone appearing a bit out of tune. He raised his eyes lightly and his voice became a bit cold. If Teacher Bai doesn't want to be a homeroom teacher, you can tell me earlier. I can still help you with this little favor. No, it's not, Chi Xiao. This time I didn't ask the reason clearly. Next time, no, definitely not next time. Shen, the teacher apologizes to you. After finishing speaking, Teacher Bai immediately bowed to Shen Nanyi. This operation was so fast that people couldn't react in time. Fan Yuan. No one can match Teacher Bai's ability to recognize mistakes. However, seeing that Teacher Bai had already made such a mistake, Fan Yuan quickly walked over and bowed 90 degrees to Shen Nanyi. Shen, I was wrong before. I'm sorry, I hope you can forgive me. Shen Nanyi remained silent and watched them quietly for a few seconds. Jiang Zhenhong's voice was low and he frowned. South, do you want my brother to change your homeroom teacher for you? Teacher Bai. Upon hearing these words, Teacher Bai couldn't help but give a shiver. Is this the end of his career? Shen Nanyi raised her eyelids and said, no need, but changing shifts is possible. Upon hearing this, Teacher Bai's hanging heart followed closely. As long as he's not replaced, everything is easy to say. Which class does Shen want to switch to? I'll arrange it for you now. Class 4. Okay, I'll help you tell the teaching director right away. I'll handle the transfer of classes, and you can take your things over later. Shen Nanyi was able to transfer classes, and Teacher Bai was almost overjoyed. He excitedly went to arrange for Shen Nanyi to transfer classes, but did not know that there was another matter waiting for him later. He takes bribes, and not only that, but also frequently unjustifies students indiscriminately, leading to many obedient students dropping out of school because of him. This matter was brought to the principal's side, and soon a notice of dismissal was sent to him. Teacher Bai almost fainted on the spot knowing about this matter. Didn't you already change classes for Shen Nanyi? Why did you still replace it for him? The news of Teacher Bai being dismissed and Shen Nanyi changing classes quickly spread on the school forum. Trenching, Shen Nanyi is going to be replaced from our class. Which class should I switch to? I feel like she's a disaster everywhere. It's better to dismiss her. Speaking of dismissal, do you know about the dismissal of the second-class white teacher? When I went to the office to hand in my homework, I heard some rumors. It seems that the homeroom teacher of class 2 was fired because of Shen Nanyi. Sisters, Shen Nanyi really changed classes. She just packed up and went to class 4. That's it, class 4 has Jiang Shen, and Shen Nanyi's life is not easy either. Shuang looked at the information on the forum and couldn't even smile. As soon as Shen Nanyi left, the air in their class really improved a lot. Class 4. The news that Shen Nanyi is going to switch to their class is known to everyone in class 4. They will gather together to discuss how to deal with her later. What are you all doing together? Jiang Shen just returned from outside because he knew that Shen Nanyi was coming to class 4, which would make him very happy. The people of Class 4 have always been mainly led by Jiang. When the boss returns, a swarm of bees naturally surround him. "Shengu, do you know about Shen Nanyi, that useless person, coming to our class? I heard that Shen Nanyi has undergone significant changes in the past few days, and I think we can give her a boost later." Yes, I also prepared props. Girls are usually afraid of this kind of thing, and she will definitely lose her face in fear later. Oh, not bad, I've used all the idioms. Upon hearing this, Jiang Shen's tone was tinged with a hint of danger. Who did you just say you were going to bully? The boy didn't realize anything and even smiled and said, "It's just Shen Nanyi, that little trash from class 2. Oh, if Nanda is a waste, what are they?" Jiang Shen curled his lips coldly and said, "You call her a waste." Even if the boy is foolish, he realizes something is wrong. Isn't that right? Shen Nanyi is a notorious waste in Longqing. What else is wrong with what he said? Jiang Shen shook his head, put his hands in his pockets, and looked at the boys in front of him with a somewhat casual expression. "It's nothing, you'll know if she's useless later," he said. End of this chapter.